let's be honest about it. The U.S. High-Speed Rail Association would not be here but for the great work of a gentleman that I still consider the chairman because of his contribution over decades to this effort to bring high-speed rail to America. And what was particularly informative today that Congressman Costa talked about was the sustainable transition of power within the committee from the former chairman to the current chairman. And that's a very important trademark to the success of this effort, because if it wasn't for the prior chairman, we would not have gotten the support that we got last year. And if it wasn't, and the announcement that was made yesterday was really part of his legacy. We're a 2-year-old association, but there were some great efforts made decades well before the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association was created. This is a legacy project, and it's something that we all have to remember. We're really not doing this for us. We're doing it for the generations that will come behind us. And the generations that have come before us have laid the foundation. So let me bring up, if I could, Congressman Costa one more time to speak to the great service that the recipient of the U.S. High-Speed Rail first Hall of Fame award will be receiving in just a moment. Congressman Costa.
Well, thank you again. I am quite honored to be a part of this presentation, and I want to thank the United States High-Speed Rail Association for providing this due recognition. It is fitting and it's appropriate that we honor Chairman Oberstar, Jim Oberstar, my friend, who for decades has been an advocate, has been sometimes single-handedly the advocate with the passion and the tenacity to want to ensure that transportation systems throughout our country are supported, invested, and continued to be a part of what the American dream is all focused about. It's about boldness, it's about vision, it's about people who are willing to take risks. And Congressman Jim Oberstar has always been one of those individuals, as he has served in the Congress with great distinction, great honor, and great accomplishment. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask our friend, Chairman Jim Oberstar, to come forward to present an award that really reflects a support for high-speed rail in America because of the experience and the expertise that he has gained, knowing full well in the 21st century, it will be a legacy of America's 21st century transportation systems, a legacy that Jim Oberstar richly deserves to be a part of the contributor to that great legacy. Congressman Jim Oberstar.
Congressman Oberstar, on behalf of the members and staff and board of directors and advisory board members of the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association, we want to thank you, first of all, for your outstanding work in Congress for over 36 years. This gentleman walked the halls of Congress and made things happen. And your leadership specifically in transportation and particularly in high-speed rail. It was a shock to hear of the developments during the last election, but your legacy continues, your inspiration continues, and we want to say thank you in our hearts for what you've done. And we present you with this award, and this is the first Life Achievement Award that's been presented by the U.S. High-Speed Rail Association, and no better person could receive it than you. Let's give him a big round of applause. Come on, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please show some
That is spectacular. That's like the Lombardi Trophy of high-speed rail. I want to tell you. Thank Jim Costa. Jim Costa, thank you, Congressman. The torch is being passed. Jim Costa is going to pick up where I left off, and oh goodness, I'll just turn that over. That was John Micah's remarks. Well, it's turning back the page of history and transportation anyway, so I'll just turn it over. Jim Costa never missed a week during the years he served in the House with me of cornering me on the House floor. That is catching me on a row where members are seated on one side, members on, I couldn't get out, and talking to me about high-speed rail, about what they're doing in California, about where it needs to go, about the advantages, about the economic benefits, about the communities that are excited and fired up about it, about the people who want high-speed rail. And he's like with missionary zeal. And Jim, pick it up, run with it. Thank you for your service. Continue slugging away. And I may not be in Congress, but I'm with you, and I'm available to travel. I don't have to show up for votes anymore, so I can go to your conferences, go to your meetings. I'm available to give talks anywhere or give inspirational, motivational sessions. Do I have a few minutes?
Please do, yes.
Oh, okay, all right. And first, before I go any further, I want to thank Jennifer Esposito. In the back of the room, Jennifer has long been our counsel on the subcommittee on railroads and other things, but it's mainly railroads. And Jennifer works hard. She's a night owl. I don't know when she sleeps. She works on her computer. She is on the phone. She goes to meetings. She absorbs every fact that is available, and she's with you. Now, we are at this extraordinary transition point. We have been since early December of 2008, when during deliberations on the stimulus package, President-elect Obama said, I talked about high-speed rail in the course of the campaign. We're traveling to Washington for the inaugural on a train. Don't you think we ought to have high-speed rail funding in the stimulus package? And I said it was like Moses and the Israelites. They woke up one morning and there was the manna. Take and eat, said the Lord. Well, take and invest. And the administration has done that. And we have to pass beyond these little quips and cute phrases and bumper sticker remarks and get to substance and seriousness about the future of high-speed rail in America. When I was a graduate student, I completed my undergraduate, won a scholarship to the College of Europe in Belgium to study European economic integration at the time of the formation of the common market. In fact, the treaties of Rome were signed in June of '57, the year we completed our graduate program. And took a train from, well, actually, took the Queen Mary from New York, that was before aviation, from New York to Le Havre. Il y a des francophones ici dans l'audience, je crois, de Québec, province de Québec. Voilà notre délégation française, d'expression française de toute façon, où j'ai fait des études à l'Université Laval à Québec. I studied at Laval University in French. So I took the train from Paris to Brussels. It was 6.5 hours. Today, that ride is 45 minutes. There is no commercial air service between the capital of Europe, Brussels, and the capital of France, Paris. But every 3 minutes, from 6 in the morning to midnight, a train is leaving in each direction with 1,100 passengers on board at 186 miles an hour. You live in Brussels, work in UNESCO in Paris, leave in the morning, come home at night, have dinner with your family. What's wrong with that picture? That, by the way, is the distance, 224 miles, Washington to New York. And you know how long it takes to get Washington to New York on current rail service. Or aviation, for that matter. I mean, it takes you 2.5 hours just by air. By the time you wait, take your shoes off and your belt off and the rest, and go through security and get on your plane and then wait on the runway. This is civilized. I traveled during that year in Europe, Paris-Lyon. That was 4.5 hours. Today, that trip is 2 hours and 1 minute. And that is essentially the distance Washington-Boston. We can do that in America. The week after election, my wife and I had a long-planned trip to France. She had actually won a lottery drawing for 2 airline tickets on the new Open Skies low-fare airline. So we land at Orly, not at Charles de Gaulle, and take a cab to Gare de Lyon. And at the Gare de Lyon, you take the TGV. And it is 2 hours and 30 minutes to Avignon. That's the distance Boston to Richmond on the East Coast. 2 hours and 30 minutes. And along the way, you see the wonderful French countryside, and you see a massive field of solar arrays where their photovoltaic cells are converting the sunlight into electricity, probably for the TGV even. And you are comfortable, you put your glass of Chardonnay on the table, and it's just perfectly level, and you can write notes and whatever you want to do. And soon you'll be able to travel Beijing, Shanghai. That's also the distance Boston-Richmond, 800 miles, in 4 hours. Now, if the Chinese are doing it, and they've already completed a line, Beijing, Lhasa, Tibet, 2,500 miles, 24 hours. The last 500 miles are at 14,000 feet altitude. They have pressurized rail cars and oxygen in the cars for the passengers. Well, now there's an advantage that the Chinese have. They don't have an American Civil Liberties Union. They have environmental laws on the books, but they don't really have to worry about them. They didn't have freight rail ahead of them. They built it all greenfield. And where there was any obstacle, they just picked people up and moved them. I was at the Shanghai airport when it was under construction. They built 2 12,500-foot runways and a terminal in the middle to handle 90 million passengers a year. And I asked the manager of the airport, what was there before? He said, 50,000 people live there. What happened to them? One day we come buses and trucks and we move them. Well, no American Civil Liberties Union to defend the people. But they built that airport in less time than it took to build an 8,700-foot runway at the Seattle airport. And the same with the TGV in France. It was greenfield. And it was started just 20 plus years after World War II. And in World War II, the time we got to 1945, the Nazis had taken every locomotive from the French rail, freight and passenger rail system, systematically every passenger car, and they and we bombed the hell out of rail stations and rail yards and lines so that 75% of all the rail stations in France were demolished. There were only a handful of locomotives left, those that the Nazis had left behind as they evacuated France. And they needed to rebuild. And we were producing 1,000 locomotives a month from a General Electric, from 3 General Electric and one other plant in the United States, and shipping them to France. The French SNCF, Société Nationale des Chemins de Fer, came over to the United States to see this marvel of production. How is it that you can produce these passenger cars and locomotives and in such great quantities and with such skill? And it was at the time when, and my Québécois will understand this, the French called it La Société Nationale du Cafouillis, the National Screw-Up Society. It was so bad, it was so badly provided, so underserved, so unable. And President de Gaulle convened commissioned a study of a high-speed rail project for France. And in 1968, the study was completed, convened the cabinet, and the study was presented. And at the end, the Minister of Finance asked, "Combien ça va coûter? How much will this cost?" And when he heard the price, he said, "Oh no, ça va nuire aux finances de la France." No, that's going to hurt the finances of all of France. And the defense minister said, "No, ça va nuire à la défense de la France." And the ministre de Santé said the same thing, and all the rest. At the end, de Gaulle asked one question. Y a-t-il un autre pays au monde qui a la même technologie? Is there another country in the world that has this technology? The answer was no. And de Gaulle said, "Alors la France sera la première." Then France will be the first. That's political will. That's seeing what can be and what should be and doing it and giving the order and providing the leadership and making it happen. And the TGV now is profitable. It's carrying the load of the rest of the French passenger rail system. It's paying back the original, has largely paid back the original cost, capital cost of investment. But it took someone with decisive sense of the destiny of the country, of where we need to be and where we need to go. And we can do this in America. Eisenhower started the interstate highway system, but it was long before Eisenhower. You go back to the 1930s. It was a visionary in the Bureau of Public Roads, E.W. McDonald, who saw the need and scoped out a plan for a 45,000-mile system of interconnected highways in America, and continued his advocacy. Roosevelt heard that appeal in 1944. When he could see the beginning of the end of the war, he commissioned a study of a system of interconnected highways. Well, it was put on the shelf after World War II as we resettled 16 million veterans. But by 1952-53, we were on course to kill 100,000 people a year on America's highways. So Eisenhower had General Clay resurrect the Roosevelt proposal, or the study that Roosevelt commissioned, update it, and that became the Interstate Highway Program. Signed it in law June 1956. We've invested $1.3 trillion in our federal aid highway system since then. We established in 1970 the Aviation Trust Fund. We've been with the ticket tax to support the building of runways and taxiways and the air traffic control system, and to pay 80% of the cost of air traffic controllers. So all comes out of your airline ticket tax. And we've invested $484 billion in aviation since 1970. And what have we done for Amtrak? That was the same year Amtrak was established, by the way. We invested $54 billion in Amtrak. Just enough to keep its nose above water, to keep it from drowning. That is not enough to forge ahead. In in 2007 when I became chairman of the committee, I launched into hearings on rail safety and on the needs of Amtrak, and we fashioned a bipartisan bill. And John Mica was an active, willing, and substantive contributor to the shape of that legislation. He was very serious about passenger rail. We defined in that bill, which President George Bush signed in October of 2008, after that terrible crash in California. We married our rail safety bill and the Amtrak bill, and the Senate rose from its slumber and passed a bill. And we laid out 11 corridors in the United States where funds should be prioritized and where there would be opportunity for participation with the private sector and the public sector, and Amtrak together with private partners or separately or with regional rail authorities would bid on improvements to be made in those corridors. And we defined high-speed rail as 110 miles an hour. That's in the law. So it is out of keeping to sniff at 110 mile an hour speed, say that's not high speed. That was what was agreed upon as the speed. And then came the Obama initiatives. And those funds, if you look at the pattern of investment, those funds have been allocated to those, not all of, but to some of those 11 corridors that we defined in the Amtrak authorization bill. Now, the President has proposed $53 billion in the upcoming budget. It was announced just yesterday by the Vice President and the Secretary of Transportation. There's a little sleight of hand because $1.7 billion per year for 6 years of that is the Amtrak budget. So roughly $40-some billion is true high-speed rail. Nothing to sneeze at. Very significant. Very difficult to accomplish in this country because, unlike the descriptions I gave you of France and China, and you could do the same with the Shinkansen in Japan, with the Talgo in Spain, with the ICE in Germany, with the NTV in Italy, they're not running on freight rail tracks. And we have to run our passenger service largely on freight rail track or in freight rail corridors. So it's a much bigger challenge, but it can be done. With positive train control technology, you can make the ways safe. It's traffic collision avoidance that we have in the air on the ground for safety of passenger and freight rail in the same corridor. But come back to that 53. That is the equivalent of 1 year of highway and transit investment spread out over 6 years. So, don't let people say, oh, this is a huge amount of money, why are we spending? That's equal to 1 year of the federal highway and transit investment. So, with all the goodwill, and all the talent in this room, all the capabilities that you have, the experience that we see and know and have at our disposal, we can make this happen. There's a willing president and an enthusiastic Secretary of Transportation. And John Mica knows what's right. And as chairman, he can make things happen. But you've got to lead. The leadership has to come from the people, from the communities, from the industries. And you have to show the economic benefits. You take transit. The Dallas Area Rapid Transit System. DART West was, after 20 years of foot dragging, finally undertaken, completed. It attracted $1 billion of private sector capital investment clustered around the 20 stops on the DART system. So successful that they started, this is 12 years ago, started DART East. and now there's north and south. And before a shovel was put in the ground, $120 million of private sector capital investment was announced for those stations along the way to cluster office buildings, apartment buildings, shopping complexes. It generates economic activity, and so will high-speed rail. That will be the benefit. It will happen. So look on this. I heard Tom saying that we're a 2-year-old organization, true high-speed rail. You may be 2 years old, but this is an old idea. Between 1850 and 1870, the United States government gave to the railroads 173 million acres of public land, 8% of the total land surface of the United States, to develop passenger rail and freight rail service from east to west and north to south. In that 20-year period, not only the land, but the right to the minerals below ground and the timber rights above ground, and the right to own and to sell that land, and they did. Billions and billions of dollars of profit made from it. And yes, they're investing private capital funds in their own system today. But last year, the 4 freight rails earned $4.5 billion in profit. And they've been profitable for a great many years. And it's time for the partnership to extend and expand. And there are leaders in the freight rail sector, especially BNSF, that want to partner and have done with commuter rails and want to be a part of a high-speed rail. We have to continue to keep them at the table. And with the leadership of the President and the Secretary of Transportation, that's going to happen. But you have to support them. You have to be the advocates. It has to come from the people and not just from the leadership, political leadership of the country. The President will provide that leadership. But without your support, it won't go very far. So you're not just a 2-year-old organization. Your roots go back to the 1850s, to the start of rail service in America, and to this new chapter, this new vision, this new direction for America, and a better and more prosperous and more effective future that will minimize our congestion, improve the movement of goods and people and the quality of life in America, and bring us into the first world and not a third world country in passenger rail service. Thank you again for this wonderful award, for your service. I'll be there with you to partner as we go along.
Please stand for Congressman, Chairman, still the Chairman, Jim Oberstar.
Thank you.
Chairman Oberstar, we need your continued leadership. We need your insight. We need your experience as we forge ahead in this movement to bring high-speed rail to America. We want to say thank you again, and we want you to become a part of our organization on our advisory committee and continue to work with us. What a loss we suffered in the campaign because we were sleeping at the switch. This is the type of political developments that can happen when you're not aware and attuned to what's happening on the ground in your communities and in the movement across the nation. Let us get energized and inspired again by your speech and your insight and your history in this movement. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for your service.
My pleasure.
One more round of applause for the chairman.